Hey everyone, it's Ivan, kitbadge.com, out here for another gear review, and today, talking stocks, these guys right here, which are the HEX 2.0 by Occam Defense, both the fixed as well as the folding. If you're unfamiliar with Occam Defense, pretty neat little company. They are kind of my neighbors, south of me, down in Moscow, Idaho, and largely most of their products kind of centered around AKs, to include actually building full AKs. And really cool guys down there, just into the weeds with like optimizing that gun, to include really neat, this is not it, but like free float handguards that actually have heat shields, take M-lock stuff, really cool stuff. Rifle Dynamics actually uses a bunch of the products made by Occam Defense, to include their 1913 trunnion, which basically goes in the back of your receiver and has a 1913 pick rail, so you can attach pretty much whatever you want to it. So their stocks, HEX 2.0 fixed as well as folding. This one right here is their fixed stock, and it is just that. There's 2 screws. They use Torx heads. Thank you for doing that. I hate when people just use random screws and then you're like, is this metric or standard? Torx, way to go. But uses 2, creates really secure lockup. You can get it really tight. And one thing that is actually nice about this design is sometimes this right here, BRN-180 from Brownells with their BRN Lower, again, doesn't need or it is a piston, so it doesn't require a buffer tube. So 1913. And one thing you can run into is sometimes people will make things out of spec. Gasp. But it happens. Really nice thing about this stock is pretty much regardless if it is out of spec a little bit, this fixed stock will go ahead and attach to it, and it will be incredibly secure on here. The other thing that I think is pretty neat is they actually make these wood panel inserts. I want to say out of walnut, again, made here in the US in Idaho. And yeah, they're pretty cool. More on that later, but yeah, this right here is their fixed stock, and I'll show you a close-up of it in a second. And then of course, this right here being the HEX 2.0 folding stock. So largely the same as their fixed stock, but this one actually marries up to a hinge and then attaches to 1913. Whether you're gonna put it on an AK, a MPX, Scorpion, Scar, whatever you wanna put it on. So again, dimensionally pretty much the same, a lot of the same features, and this one goes onto a hinge. I will say the hinge they use is incredibly beefy on this, which is nice, locks up incredibly tight. And this one basically folds to the left, and you press down or up respectively in the opposite direction of the receiver to unlock that hinge, folds over, and then flips out, locks up nice and tight. And some of the things that I actually really do appreciate about these stocks is options. So there's actually 6 different QD sockets in here. All of them are actually limited rotation, which is amazing. When people make QD sockets that are not limited rotation, it's like, why are you doing that? But you have, well, basically point back here, here, as well as in the middle, and same thing on this side. That said, if you're going to use those wood panel inserts, which you can use, I have a set, or that set is interchangeable between these two. For the HEX 2.0, there was a 1.0, which is a different like shape pattern, but they are interchangeable. If you do use them, you end up covering up that QD socket there. But yeah, pretty solid. Which brings us to how they used them, how have they done for me? Well, I will speak to this little gun right here. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun with this. This is my BRN-180 and 7.62 at 39, and I've been shooting this fixed stock on it. Things I really like. One, incredibly rigid, like it does not move, there's no wiggle at all, to include, or contrast with rather, lots of times if you have like a stock on an AR that's sliding on that receiver extension, sometimes you get play in there and it moves a little bit. There's no play whatsoever in this. It's really nice. Also, with all of their stocks, they're machined here out of aluminum in the US, and they do a really good job of just, yeah, everything is super smooth. There's no burrs, anything like that, which makes it really comfortable to shoulder and fire. And then type 3 hard coat anodized, and they actually use Healy coils. So when you screw the bolts, the fasteners in, whether it's this or the folding stock, there's a Healy coil that basically captures that screw, which is way stronger and better than just like anodized aluminum. But back to the stock. So I ended up actually shooting this in High Desert Brutality. Really fun match, tons and tons of fun. I think it was like either 8 or 10 stages over the course of 2 days. And this was a ton of fun to shoot. It did great. And since then, and before then, really, any range day, no, like I really like it. It is a fixed stock, and there's not comb height or anything like that. Does that matter? Not really, because usually with whatever you're putting it on, you have a number of different like settings. You can basically put it on at different heights. So if I wanted this lower, I could put it lower. If I want it higher, I could put it a little bit higher. And for me personally, that right there lines up well with irons, or if I'm gonna put an optic on, works great. I will say, as cool as this wood panel is, which I think honestly, it's really cool, something to be aware of. I ended up actually having these come loose on me some, just under recoil, running around. Granted, probably use my things a little harder than like a lot of people do, but just something to be aware of. If you're gonna put this on and you want it to stay on, go ahead and use some Loctite. I didn't and I don't, largely just because I'm in the business of trying things. So often taking things off, putting things on, things like that. So if you are going to use the wood panels, make sure you do that. I will say I somehow managed to chip this one a little bit right there. Not sure, again, pretty rough with it. But yeah, overall this fixed stock has done an awesome job for me. Which brings me to this folding stock. It has spent time on a couple of different host guns, this being the most recent one, my Scar 20 battle rifle I've been making, and it does a great job on here as well. As I spoke to with a fixed stock, there is no like cheek riser, so usually whatever gun you're putting it on, you can basically adjust up and down some with that pick rail. For me personally, I have it set up like this because with the piston system sitting above the barrel and the optic height, this basically lines up perfectly for me with this low mount. If I was going to use like a standard like AR sights or AR mount, something like that, I have room. I could go ahead and move it up so my eye is more in line with it, but this right here actually does a good job. I have also shot this a bunch with my boys. Had it on a pretty fun little Charger, Ruger 22 in the SB Tactical chassis. Thing did a good job. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. One thing of note with folding stocks, period, across the board is, what is the utility? Well, obviously, so you can just shoot this from the hip with the stock. No. The utility is really in transportation on pretty much any gun. So if that is something that is important to you, I would definitely check out the folding version. I will say this locks up incredibly tight with the hinge they use. Is it heavy? Compared to what? Like compared to like plastic SB brace? Probably. With the hinge and everything, I think it's about 15 ounces, but it also locks up really tight. As I mentioned earlier, everything is nice and smooth. And there's enough meat back here to where when you're shooting, even 6.5, pretty much anything, you're not getting beat up by it. Now, granted, it is metal and it will conduct heat as well as cold. So if this thing is laying out there freezing cold and you go up, throw your cheek up against it, yeah, probably feels pretty cold. But overall, I've, like I said, been really pleased with this. Having said all that, is there anything I don't care for about them? Honestly, no. Is there any limitations with them? There is, in that limited length of pull, in that it is what it is. It being a fixed stock, or even the folding stock, it only gives you so much length of pull. What is the length of pull? Totally depends on the gun you're putting it on, whether it's an AK, BRN, SCAR, all of those different things have basically a different pointed space where that trunnion or the 1913 rail is. So totally depends kind of on that gun. Does it matter? Not really. I mean, if you're really huge and your stock is all the way pulled out on like an AR, for example, this may end up being too short for you. I don't know. You'd have to try it. But overall, been pretty pleased with them. Price-wise, you're looking at, I want to say $160 and about $220 for respectively the fixed or the folding, and the wood panels, I think about $70. Again, all made here in the US, down in Moscow, Idaho. There'll be links down below if you want to check it out. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.